Now, I just want to say a little bit about the original intention to the project. And if I say that the planning for this was done in 2016, and as we will all have a view, 2016, the world was very different then. It was very different in so many ways. And in particular, part of the focus of what we intended the project to do was also different then. The situation in Spain and in Italy and in Sweden was slightly different. And we can speak here probably more on the conference now will focus more about practice in the UK. But back in 2016, the whole notion of institutional and personal professional engagement with ACEs was gathering pace, but to many organizations was still new. And the world has changed. And I do want to reflect on that very, very shortly when I've introduced partners, because what has happened is the focus of what we've been underdoing the project has had to change because of certain external factors, not least that views on ACEs and trauma has developed. Now, I'd like to introduce one by one our partners, and they'll say a little bit about their organizations. They'll say a little bit about engagement in project. Partners, we've asked for just a brief contribution and statement now, but can I just say to you, please do engage at any point during the rest of the day. And even though the focus will be more significantly on UK practice, we will be making reference to things we've learned in the project, which show comparative practice in other parts of the partnership. And please do play a part there. Milagros, I wonder if I can call upon you first to talk about your place in northern Spain, in Galicia.
Good morning, everybody. Okay. We are a school near Santiago of Compostela. We are a primary secondary school, and we participated together with the town hall of Cerceda in this project. I thank the Learning Institute to invite us to participate in this project. Our school has participated in European projects since 1997. So we have achieved a lot of knowledge through the years. And not only teachers, but also students. More than 100 students travel every year abroad. Many of our students go to London to a school for exchange with the students. Our participation in this project has been very interesting. It's another way to learn how to collaborate interprofessional professionals and all collaborating to make better the students' kids with problems life. So it was interesting to see the way of seeing things and work in Sweden, Italy, England, and I have to say that it was a very nice experience. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Milagros. Thank you. And you've been a most excellent partner. We're very, very grateful. Rosa, I wonder if you could tell us about your organization in Seville in southern Spain.
Hello, everybody. Good morning. I am Rosa. I am teacher in Polígono Sur. Our center is located in Sevilla, in La 3000 Vivienda. It's a neighborhood where there are a large number of people in social exclusion. Our students live in difficult contexts surrounded by drugs, violence, and crime. We participate in this project to improve interprofessional working, and our main problem is the high rate absenteeism and school dropout.
Thank you, Rosa. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. It's been very interesting also to have two partners from Spain to get a different perspective from different areas with different authorities. And it's something that I think we in the UK noted which is about practice in Wales and practice in Scotland, has been quite different. And I think we saw that reflected also in Spain. Thank you, Rosa, very much. Christina, I'll put your presentation up on screen now.
Okay, thanks a lot, Nick.
There we go. Is that on screen now?
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Mary Christina.
Okay, thank you very much, Nick. So our school is based in Parma. Parma is in the north of Italy. It's what we call a comprehensive school, since we have a nursery school, 2 primary schools, and a lower secondary school. So with an overall of about 1,100 students. Their ages range from 4 to 14 years old. There you go. And so in Italy, our school system is compulsory until the age of 16. And then the students have 2 more years when they reach the age of 18 and they have their final exams. We have been partners in some Erasmus projects since 2016. Here you have the overall number, which was updated yesterday. So it's about 1,200 students and 147 teachers. And if you can scroll it, I think yes, this is about Parma. As you know, Parma is famous all over the world for food, because we are situated in what we call the Food Valley, especially related to Parmesan cheese and ham. But Parma is also a lot of architecture. As you've seen, we have a very important baptistry, it's a medieval church, Roman. Well, it goes back to the Roman time, so it's quite popular in Italy. And we have the European authority called EFSA, is the Food Safety Authority for Europe. And I think Nick is the next one. Yes, it is. We have been partners in Erasmus projects since 2016. We started with UK leading the first project we took part in, which was risk-taking in the classroom. And then we continued for the following years. We wrote a project ourselves, which was about graphic stories, and then ACE, and then natural schooling. And as you can see, storytelling. And we're also doing some e-twinning with the UK and Italy. We're still working on that. And then I think is the next one, which says why we took part. We were invited to take part in this huge project, I would say. And we were very happy, since our school, our organization has been, in our school mission, we have been working with children with ACEs for many years. Next year, we are going to have about 120 students with what we call ACEs, and ranging from disabilities to social problems. So, I mean, if you compare this number, it means about 10% of our students have problems relating to ACEs. In Italy, we have a few acts that regulate the fact that all students are included in schools, even if they have major disabilities. And according to Italian law, which is Act 104, all students have a support teacher. So that's why this project was very important for us, because it gave us the opportunity to understand what other countries have been doing with problems relating with, I would say, not children with problems, but children with a different way of learning. So we were very happy to take part in it. Okay, here is the article which came out in the local newspaper on June the 1st, which also include this project, because we were showing to the city of Parma what we have been doing in the past few years. Okay, thank you very much for listening.
Thank you very much, Maria Cristina. we've a very good partner in Sweden, but unfortunately a representative has not been able to join us today. This is Broman Gimiantet in Hudiksvall in the middle of Sweden, and that is also a school which is an all-through school, and includes work from clearly from the very youngest up to post-16 work, and our Swedish colleagues have been very much engaged in the project, but unfortunately can't have a representative with us today for other reasons. But we will try to represent some of the points that come from Sweden as the conference goes on. Jerry, I wonder if I might ask you to say a little bit about Devon and Cornwall, please.
Yeah, hi Nick. Hi everybody. Thanks very much. I'd like to start by saying thanks to the Learning Institute for the opportunity to have been involved in this over the last 4 years. It's the first time, certainly in our force, that we've had any major links to a program like this, and it's been really interesting and useful linking up with the other country partners and with yourselves in the academy. What I was going to do is give a quick overview of the force and then a quick overview of the team, as a lot of them are here today, and they will magically appear on screen as I do so, and hopefully all they'll be familiar to everyone throughout the day. Short overview of the force. It's Devon and Cornwall. As an organisation, it's an organisation that looks at various sort of policing factors as we go through day-to-day business. A lot of them linked to young people that have focused our attention, both from a criminal justice perspective or the welfare-based support that we offer the at-risk cohort, from young people, for instance, with radicalisation risks or county lines risks, through to children in care and high-risk missing cohorts, along with many of the other safeguarding requirement groups. Clearly, a lot of this relates to the ACEs and the trauma-related guys that we're talking about. The force itself has over 3,000 police officers, complemented by hundreds of special officers, multi-agency response teams. On top of this, we've got about 2,500 support staff and a wide contingent of civilian volunteers who work alongside to assist the delivery of the service. About our population for the area is about 1.7 million. It's predominantly rural as a force area, but this rises to 11 million people within the peak times. And as we know, as a result of COVID, which we'll talk about further into the day, this is likely to be significantly higher for some years, potentially. It covers 3,965 square miles, and we've got about 700 miles of coastline. Now, what I was going to do now is just run into some discussion around the team. We've got key areas of activity, but for our team, the youth vulnerability issues are the predominant feature. So hopefully at this point, all my team will magically appear on the screen. In Cornwall, as part of the partnership community safety team, we look after various vulnerability strands, and the guys that should be with you today and assisting with some of the workshops are youth specialists. We cover the whole geographic area and manage essentially how to limit threat, risk and harm as part of the standard Thrive model that a lot of people will be aware of. Also providing that service that supports the day-to-day policing or business as usual that you'll probably hear us refer to at various points around, but also continuing the specific areas we've already mentioned. The areas of business that are key as a team are organisational development, which is where obviously a lot of the Erasmus and the ACEs training come in. And we have vulnerability strategies now in place, child-centred policing strategies in place. And there's a lot of other factors around trauma and ACEs, especially relevant for the team when dealing with young people. Team functions, which I'll wrap up fairly quickly, Nick, because I don't want to go on too much for you, but the team functions, the specialist functions for the guys you're looking at now, and we've got Jody, Jay and Andy on the call there. They fall into effectively three main areas. We've got community interventions, which are things like the school, college safety inputs, covering sort of online safety and use of use of phones, and the various risks that can emerge from that. Work experience, residential police experience, Duke of Edinburgh course opportunities, cadets, careers fairs, life skills. Then we move on to the specific group interventions, which are the restorative conferences with schools for the children where they need to be, dealt with in particular manners. The 999 academies, where we try and engage with the more at-risk cohorts, and some of the work that we do in pupil referral units or short stay schools, depending on where your terminology with these are in the county. And finally, we move to the more complex interventions, which are the repeatedly missing children, where we do a lot of work with the other agencies. School refusers, working with school education welfare officers. Youth Offending Service are a major partner that we work with in terms of some of the criminal justice outcomes. And finally, around the radicalisation awareness and targeted intervention to try and limit the harm that can be caused there. And the only other bit to add to that is that in recent years, we've seen level and complexity of crime has increased massively. For instance, nowadays, we see much more cybercrime, social media-based offences, along with all the vulnerabilities that those bring. So I'll wrap it up there, Nick, but we'll be on hand all day to answer any questions, and hopefully give you some more context around the COVID sort of peculiarities, if you like.
Thank you, Jerry, and thank you also, Jodie, Andy, and Jay. And of course, our police colleagues here, you're all coming out of also the other intense piece of work related to G7, because you were responsible for making that run.
We don't mention G7, Nick.
Oh, we don't mention it. We'll expunge it from the record. Thank you very much. Thank you, Jerry. Wendy, I wonder if you would tell us about Devon Virtual School.
Yeah, morning everyone. It's nice to see lots of familiar names popping up in the room. So apologies, because some of you will know a lot about the virtual school and some of you won't know very much at all. So I'm Wendy Olsen. I've been head of the virtual school in Devon since January. So took the job, and the day after I started, we went into lockdown for children. So that was a bit of a challenge. Those of you that don't know about virtual school, I'm going to talk a little bit later on in the morning about the detail of what we do. Our main priority is promoting high aspiration and positive educational outcomes for children that are in care to Devon. It is a statutory requirement that all local authorities have a virtual school. How it's set up and how it's planned and what it does is completely up to each local authority. You just have to have one, and you have to have a head teacher, and then you can do pretty much what you like. We've been lucky to be invited to be part of the Erasmus work. I was lucky enough to go to Sweden, and apart from the overwhelmingly warm welcome and having mousse for dinner, which I haven't forgotten, I thought it was going to be of the chocolate variety, and then realised that this dinner once had antlers or horns or whatever you call those things. The overriding memory I have of that was the post-16 provision, which I came away thinking, oh my goodness, if only we could start education again in the UK. Because when young people get to what would be the end of our year 11, the post-16 provision all happens in the one place. So within what they call going to college, you have those that are doing a very academic route, those that are doing a vocational route, those that in the UK would be in a specialist provision, all in the one place. So there's no conversation about where are you going, what are you doing. It's we're all going to post-16. And it felt the most inclusive thing I've ever come across. And when we were having conversations with the school and with the post-16 provision about how they manage inclusion, exclusion, they didn't actually know what we meant, because there is no concept that a young person would be asked not to attend school anymore. And that gave us quite a lot of food for thought, really, about how that was managed and what we could bring back to add to what we're doing here. So it's great to be part of today, and I'll talk a little bit more about the virtual school a bit later in the morning. So thanks, everybody.
Wendy, thank you very much. Thank you for that, and thanks in anticipation for the slot you're going to do later, where you will, as you say, give some more detail, but also thank you for your engagement of yourselves and your colleagues in the project. It really adds to the richness of it, and I think we all learned a huge amount. I just want to say a very quick word about our own organisation, which is the Learning Institute. We're part of West Country Schools Trust, which is a very large multi-academy trust based in the west of Devon, in Plymouth, and with a foot in Cornwall as well. Our office, where I'm speaking to you now, and Zoe, my colleague, is actually a little bit further in Cornwall, and the sunshine is slipping away a little bit, but I'm sure it'll come out shortly. West Country Schools Trust is a large organisation. It's got a lot of primary schools, it's got a lot of secondary schools. The Learning Institute is an outreach part of the organisation, and a large part of our work is undergraduate and postgraduate work. We train teachers in primary and secondary for years, and we also get involved in projects like this and in research work. And we've been very proud and quite humble, actually, feeling working with colleagues on the programme. So thank you very much, colleagues. Now, I gave an invitation, Wendy and Jerry and Milagros and Rosa and Mary Christina. I gave you a very warm invitation, of course, to be engaged in any of the discussions coming after. Can I also say to you, all you participants, if you have particular questions where you'd like to find out about practice in one of our other partner countries, please do ask it through the chat. And Zoe and Anya and colleagues can direct questions. So it would be good to take an opportunity to do that. Thank you all very much. Thank you, partners, for your introduction. We just want to say a few words now about the context of the project. And I want to come back to the point that I was making before about some of the changes that had occurred during the time of the project. And I'll start with this first one, as I noted before. From 2016 to today, there has been a tremendous growth in the awareness of ACEs, and a huge amount of investment by many professions in terms of trauma-informed practice. Now, I would say that we're at a point in the UK where it would be rarer that a professional had not come across training. We're going to do a little poll shortly, aren't we, Maddie, which relates to this. But I think we would say it would be rarer that people have not had experience of ACEs and of trauma-informed practice growing. And I think it'd be also right to say that we're far too early in a complex process to be able to evaluate impact of some of the measures that have been taken. But we have seen a period of intense training, and the project really spanned that period. So what we've tried to do in the project is to use our work to form more of a directory to help draw together accessible resources which are going to be important in the UK and in the other partner countries. The resources will also be very useful for people who want to explore comparative practice. And we'll tell you a little bit later how you will get hold of these resources. Now, also over the period of this project, there's been much more criticism of the concept of ACEs. Now, I'm using the word criticism in its proper academic sense, a discussion about and raising questions about it. So some of the questions have been questions about assumptions behind ACEs and about calls for processes of screening and about the collecting of data. There have been some very interesting comments made about the impacts of pessimism. And we might feel that actually in our interprofessional context of trying to address how to be involved in prevention or amelioration of trauma for young people, or more particularly in dealing with support processes that might come afterwards. And pessimism can be quite an enemy to that. But some of the biggest discussions have been about a taxonomy of ACEs, you know, that exactly how many ACEs are there or might there be. And of course, as time has gone by, the number of possible adverse experiences and the data that supports them has grown. And I just want to mention a few here. I mean, we would have had colleague Movita Chapman-Moyle would have been talking, but unfortunately she is very unwell at the moment. But her research looks at the impact on young people of illness in their parents, particularly in their mothers. And we will, because we won't be able to have her contribution in session 2, we will share contact detail for her research so that you can see. I think participants, I think you'll be very interested in what her research has pointed out. There have been significant work on prenatal things, the work of Barry Carpenter and others on fetal alcohol syndrome and on the issues that come with premature birth. And so the whole notion of what that fuller list of what ACEs might be is an ever-changing one, and it's one which has been constantly added to. You may have come across the work of David Finkelhor, and he probably summarizes best, and there's a very recent report that he's produced, he summarizes best that changing picture of the nature of ACEs. But a crucial part to it is we have seen a significant rise in the levels of engagement. And I think we have seen that running through. Jerry, I don't know if you want to come in and say a little bit about police experience of moving to trauma-informed practice.
Yeah, absolutely. I think from the beginning of the project, whilst we've put a lot of investment into what we call out of court disposals, which is where the team that you've already had sight of today deals specifically with the sort of needs of young people within the criminal justice system. It's now transferred into a much wider force-led vulnerability strategy supported function, and I think that's going to be something which we only see increase because we're now seeing it linking into the community safety partnerships as well, and it's an exponential growth, which can only be a good thing.
Yeah, no, thank you very much indeed. Thank you. And we're seeing this, I think, across professions. The other aspect to the project was interprofessional working. Now I want to just say a little bit about the title. We did an early trawl of different terms, and we came across 9 different terms: multi-professional, interagency working, and it's difficult to say whether these are synonymous, whether they all mean the same thing. So we've kept interprofessional working as the most general title that we can. So basically, of course, what we're looking at is those ways that different professions that relate to the experience of children and young people in practice work together, and the sets of intentions behind it. Now, again, I'm reflecting just on the UK for a minute here. But of course, what we had 10 years back with the Common Core and with Every Child Matters was a directed approach for common approaches to professional training. Well, that's become a little dissipated since the removal of that national structure for children's services. And what we have now is different focuses on different professions in health, in social services, in education, in the police, and in other children's services related professions. Different focuses, but all at some point make reference to the need for effective interprofessional working. We've also seen other things developed. Points that you were making there, Jerry, about the statutory partnerships for a trauma-informed approach. Bring different professions together and give a forum for sharing and for discussion. And also during the life of this project, a process which has started, but it has stalled a little bit and has delayed a little bit. But this is the joint targeted inspections. This is the bringing together of the major national regulatory bodies, Ofsted HMIC for police, Quality Care Commission, and HMIP for probation work, to make joint targeted inspections where the work of different children's services professions or partnerships with them can be seen as a whole. That's an attempt to stop that fragmentation of work there. I don't know, Wendy or Jerry, if you want to say anything about experiences of interprofessional working and to pick up maybe some aspects of the points that I've just made there.
Yeah, Nick, thanks. I'm one of the unlucky ones. Was the team have gone gallivanting around the different countries. Unfortunately, I haven't had the opportunity to join them, but the feedback that we've had from the visits to the other countries has been absolutely fascinating, really, because it's everything from the variations in how youth justice is applied to differences in exclusions within schools, and the lessons that can be learned from all of that, really. So for us, it's been really valuable. And say, if any of the team that have been on the foreign trips want to join in and make any comments, feel free to do so. But it's just been a very much an eye-opening and a learning experience, really, to do it.
Thank you very much. Wendy, the virtual school is right in the heart of complex interprofessional partnerships, isn't it?
Oh, definitely. And actually, we couldn't do our work with children in care on our own. We work very closely with the Devon Inclusion Service, who I know there's a few people here today from there. Particularly when a child comes into care, they're quite often a child already known to that particular service, so we can pick up where they have been working already. For children who are missing education, again, we work closely with the educational welfare team. We also have in Devon a newly formed, was called the Edge of Care service, and now renamed Bridges. It doesn't sound quite so carey, I suppose. You know, it's a bit more inclusive, I think, and that's working well to work with young people who, to try and prevent them coming into care and put services around families so that young people, oh, hello, Karen, you're with Bridges. That's great. Nice to have you here. So that's about absolutely trying to prevent young people coming into care, because our research and experience shows us that it is better if young people can stay with their family, but also for those young people who are in care, but we're hoping it will be for a very short time so that they can return home. And then those young people that are going home from care, to have support for the family when they're back in that family unit in that adjustment time. We also work really closely with our police colleagues. They are present in lots of the social care meetings and social care panels. We have a lot of work that we do with the Educational Psychology Service. They're our biggest partner, really. And two of our colleagues will be talking this afternoon in one of the workshops about a project that we commission with the Babcock Educational Psychology team, which we call the REDS project, which stands for Reducing Exclusions in Devon Schools. That has been extremely successful, and not only just works with the child and the school, but all the other professionals that are working around that family and that child. We actually have a lot of projects with the Education Psychology Service in trying to prevent children from being excluded from school, but also looking at what's going to happen at transition points in school, and also when we get to the end of education time, to prevent them becoming NEET. So our relationships with professionals is absolutely key to what we're doing. Obviously, a lot of our work is with our social care colleagues as well. Mustn't leave them out. And Karen's putting some interesting bits. I'm hoping everyone can see those. And Karen, it came up and disappeared too quickly for me to read it. I think it was about working when children can return home. I can't see. It's disappeared.
Yeah, I was only going to add that if it is deemed to be the child's best interest not to return home, we do a lot of restorative work so that although they can't live in the family home, those family relationships are repaired, so they can, you know, go home for meals or still be completely isolated. That was all.
Yeah, great, thank you. And Shane, I'm sorry to leave CAMS out. Shane will be telling me off for this. So obviously we work very, very closely with CAMS, as CAMS work closely with social care, and we get fantastic support for the professionals as well as the young people. And the CAMS service in Devon, through Shane's team, offer supervision for professionals to talk through cases, to look at the best way forward. Because we really, oh no, I'm getting into lots of trouble. Look, Kathy Jeremy's now saying, what about the child and care nurses? I think I'd better be quiet before I say, but we obviously, I can't remember all the partners, but child and care nurses is vital to what we're doing, and have been particularly during the lockdown time in continuing to support young people that we're working with. If I've forgotten anybody else, I apologise. It isn't intentional, I promise.
You may have the prize in the virtual school for the broadest and the most complicated, complex set of interprofessional relationships.
Well, I've forgotten Yacht, actually. They'll probably tell me off now. The working with the youth offending team is really key to what we do. And basically, we'll try and draw in as many different partners, that whoever is able to offer something to that child and that family, we will try and work with them. So.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Thank you, Wendy. And we, as I said before, we will try to capture things that come up in the chat and the other points, so further links can be passed on. In the project, we decided to focus on a number of themes, and this first list that I want to take you through are ones which will appear in different ways in the workshops and the presentations that come later today. So just going to spend a few minutes on some of these themes. The first of them was toxic stress. When we plunged into the very complex world of ACEs, complex in that it's difficult to pin down quite what the full set might be if there is a full set, and difficult to pin down actually also the complex sets of both causes and outcomes that come from them. One thing that we did focus on very much was the notion of toxic stress. And in particular, you know, these psychological processes that we go through and the sets of impacts on this. Really interesting focus for it. Now, this is going to be picked up in a number of places today, and I think probably by my colleagues Anne Ferguson and Nick Wilkins, and I'm absolutely sure that others will pick this up today. And I'd say participants, look out for this as one of the strands that might be running through. When we publish the handbook for the project, what we will note under this, as we will for the other main themes we're going to take you through, we'll note things like major publications which relate to this, work that we undertook on the project. This was actually a focus for a training session that we in the Learning Institute put together. So things that we did in the project, but also we will note in the handbook training and information that can be gained from people outside the project, because we want to draw it together as a directory, and we really want it to be very useful to people who read it. So if you're interested in the science behind toxic stress and some of the physiological processes that affect children and young people, and then some of the professional approaches that can be brought in to alleviate that, we aim in the handbook to bring that together. This was one of the key ones. Clearly, seeking common goals across children's services was another key part. That development of shared aims and processes, and also where common goals for supporting children and young people come in initial professional and in leadership training. An oddity from my profession, which is the teaching profession. We train teachers and we train leaders in schools, and the only statutory training for new teachers and for preferred training for leaders comes for interprofessional working comes actually in the context of safeguarding. It doesn't necessarily cover those broader aspects of how interprofessional working can and should support effective working. Now, within today's thing, work by a presentation by Aidan Phillips from Wave Trust, by Nigel Hoare from Devon and Cornwall Police, from Wendy yourself, you've spoken before, from our colleague Tim Jones, should all be picking up, we believe, aspects of common goals. So again, participants, look out for that as the day progresses. Now, our colleagues in Hudiksvall in Sweden themselves designed and piloted and put on a training program focusing on interprofessional working and common goals. And that will be available as part of the handbook, which comes out as one of the outcomes of the project, and that will be available to you. Now, I want to move on to then a theme which has quite a number of aspects for us. And this theme is picked up in a lot of the work and a lot of the workshops today. And I'll just note for everybody that there is an S on behaviours there. So we're not talking about behaviour in a limited sense of behaviour and discipline structures in schools or in other children's services organisations. We're actually talking about the impact that experience of adversity in childhood can have on children's behaviour in the broader sense. Then, of course, there are the responses that we make to this. They might be responses from schools, they might be responses from local authority services, they might be responses from specialist organisations that deal with behaviour, they might be within the police and other agencies. We want to focus in particular on the impact of behaviour systems in schools and links to exclusion. And these are going to come up in a number of different points today. So there are specific ones that Ellis Brooks will be taking us through from the Peace Education team in Quakers in Britain. They'll be picked up by Richard Woodland and by Jay and myself in one of the workshops, and by Matt Jones and Catherine Cartwright, supported by Jerry from Babcock and Devon local authority. So this is a major theme coming through, and you can see the reasons why, because of course what we're dealing with here are the ways that we from a professional background come face to face with the impact of adversity that children face. We don't want to miss out on that final point though, which is about adult and professional behaviours and attitudes. And we hope that that's actually going to be picked up by quite a number of speakers today, but in particular our colleagues Tim Jones from the Learning Institute and Andy Filkins from Devon and Cornwall Police will be focusing on that in particular, the crucial part to it. I'm going to pause for a minute there and just to see if Wendy or Jerry or Zoe or others just want to come in on the three that I've raised at the moment: toxic stress, common goals, and behaviour. I want to then talk about three further themes that we are going to focus on today.
It's Wendy here. I would say probably for us, the behaviour is the one that is the way that the toxic stress and shows itself, and it is something that we are particularly concerned about post lockdown, actually, in schools having different behaviour systems, with schools being quicker to have young people on fixed term exclusions, having ready to learn facilities within their schools, or often called reset rooms. And we are doing an awful lot of work on relational work within schools, as we strongly believe that's the way forward. And we do appreciate that schools have had a really, very, very tough 18 months. And we're noticing, though, that is having an impact on the number of children that are having exclusions, and that there is less time in many schools for delving into the reasons behind why children are finding it hard to return. Many children in care actually thrived during the lockdown time. In the January to March lockdown, we had about 75% of children in care in Devon that were attending school. And it was great because the school classrooms were small, the numbers in classrooms were small, and they had more time and attention from staff. And they have struggled with the rest of the school coming back, particularly little ones have been quite grumpy that all the other children have got to share their teacher now. So that one, I think, for us is where we're focusing a lot of time and trying to we put a lot of our funding into training and work with schools around relational approaches and training on attachment and trauma, which we'll talk about a bit later.
Wendy, thank you very much. And you've raised a very interesting point about the pandemic and about impacts there. And you know, well done with that level of attendance, which of course would have been very unlike most other student pupils and young people attending school, particularly in the earlier part of the lockdown. We will pick up those elements. The first stage will be at Ellis Brooks, coming to aspects of relational working directly afterwards. Jerry, I don't know if you have comments to make there.
Yeah, only a brief one, really, Nick. It was around the from the behaviour perspective, because obviously the police are in a fairly unique or a different situation than some of the other support agencies, because we very much are at the front end of when incidents happen and when we're dealing with the crisis point, if you like, rather than the longer term treatment, although we obviously have a part to play in that. But I think building on, we've seen massive increases in the work that we've been doing with social services. It's got a long way to go for both organisations, I think. But just in terms of the sharing of some of the information that's out there, like the psych reports, and us being able to put that into real world different responses that our frontline services would then take into account when they're dealing with someone at a crisis point, that can actually go a long way to, in terms of behaviours, knowing what behaviours mean, knowing how they should be addressed. So looking at it from a sort of a reverse angle, that's an area that we're really interested in, is how we can sort of put that into our working practices so that we minimise the harm at that sort of critical point, really.
Yeah, thank you very much indeed. Thank you. I'm going to move on to three other themes in the project, and these three are also strongly represented in the programme today, or potentially can be. This one, I mean, clearly, Jerry, very much focusing on the world of the police, but not in any way removing the engagement of many other professional agencies in it, but that link between adversity in childhood and child criminal and child sexual exploitation. Now, this may be taken up by Nigel and by Jay and Andy and others later, but I don't know if you want to say a quick word about it now, Jerry.
Yeah, I can talk very sort of broadly about it. We know we've been involved in projects such as the Engage project with the Home Office some years ago, looking at the links between early years adverse childhood experiences and, for instance, membership of organised crime, domestic abuse going forward. There's a whole set of factors which obviously can then be affected by that early the early exposure to ACEs. In the issue has come down for it, and I don't like the terminology, but for us it's drawing the so what out of it, in terms of, right, what do we do? How do we actually do something different to address that? How do we identify it? What stages do we have opportunities to get in and actually address it? Now, to do those sort of things, the things we're already looking at is around what we call gatekeeping decisions. Mm-hmm. With when we deal with young people, we're trying to make sure that all of the people that make those gatekeeping decisions are informed about things related to the ACEs and the CCE and the CSE side of things, so that when the finalisation for any individual going through a process, which is a necessary part of the police interaction with them quite often, that process is informed by that the whole range of factors that we know can make that difference. So yeah, it's a massive challenge to cover it properly and cover it completely. But I think we are at the right end of where we are starting to do that.
Thank you very much, Jerry. And I think, as I was saying before, your other colleagues will be speaking later today, and they may pick these points up, because this does link also to those discussions like Wendy you were raising about the impacts of behaviour systems and about that process by which children are placed in further points of vulnerability. Thank you very much. This next one is of particular importance to us. It's been very interesting through the project, seeing different professional cultures, both within the UK and across the work of the other partners on continental Europe. And the voice, those issues about the voice of children and young people, are often institutional and related to policy and practice. But I think we found in the project they also very much come back to that point that we raised before, which is about adult attitudes. And probably it's one of those things that we need to hold a mirror up to ourselves as individuals, even about that testing, about how open we are and whether we do have those approaches for gaining children's voice. I would say this is likely to be picked up right across the presentations today, so I won't necessarily pick out ones, maybe beyond some very clear ones of Ellis and Matt and Catherine, where we know it's going to be a key part of the systems being set out there. But participants do test all our presenters and do come and ask questions about this. We think it's an absolutely crucial one. And the final theme that we're picking up, perhaps in detail or potentially in detail today, is this set of what can be done about it. What are the protective factors? How might we as professionals help develop optimism and help develop resilience in young people? I think that's going to appear in quite a few. I'd pick again my colleagues Anne Ferguson and Nick Wilkins might be focusing on this quite directly, but I'm sure others will as well. Those are a set of themes that we know we're going to focus on a lot, and do ask questions about those, and we will try to collate material relating to those so we can perhaps group questions related to it. We also want to just bring to attention a set of other themes in the project, and it's not that they won't come up today, but we couldn't cover. We were worried that we didn't want to be superficial in what we're doing here, so we've been selective in the ones we're focusing on. We've already mentioned, though, the pandemic, and Wendy's experience there was an interesting one, and we know, we know, Anne Ferguson, Anne, when you're talking shortly about domestic violence, you'll probably be setting out quite a different picture. So we know we're going to get during the day different views and different aspects that relate to the different impacts of the pandemic. Maddie, I wonder if you could take us through the polls and the outcomes of those polls.
Yeah, so the first one on how informed people feel about ACEs. Most people think they have an awareness of ACEs and can see how they impact on young people. Only 22% of everyone who voted has a comprehensive knowledge of ACEs. 14% feel like they need to know more. Yeah. With interprofessional working, only 2% of people who voted think that professionals are partaking in reflective joint working very effectively, but 82% of people think that there's definitely a willingness to work together, but some aspects could be improved. 14% of people think we need to work a lot better together. And then the most recent poll on children's voices, again, the majority of people think that young people are informed about decisions made about them, but we could still utilize their voices more effectively. 17% of people think major decisions are made with real input from young people, and 28% of people think we don't do enough to seek and use children's voices.
Thank you very much. I'm grateful to everybody for that. I mean, I think that probably does reflect from the group of us as participants here something of the picture that we set out at the beginning about the awareness of ACEs growing. And I think a sort of healthy, positive sense of interprofessional working. I want to make the first of two observations, though, on the nature of our group here. Those of you who will come to a conference like this, my guess would be are probably people you know, clearly interested, or you wouldn't be here, and actually engaged in these processes. And I think one of the things which is an interesting one is for that one relating to interprofessional practice, if we could undertake a survey which went much wider than this group, would those figures be different? And I want to make a slightly different comment just to the last one on children's voice. You see, one of the things which is clear about our group here is, you know, what are we? Professionals working in children's services, academics and students, and people with this level of interest. And again, I'm absolutely sure people strongly committed to a high level of engagement of children and young people. Of course, what tends to happen is when children and young people themselves are asked, they are much less positive than adults generally are about the extent to which they're listened to and the extent to which actions come based on their own set of views. And I think one of the things that we have to carry with us is that imbalance of view between the adult view and the child view in most surveys that are undertaken. We can include information about surveys in the material that comes at the end. We're close to a coffee break now, and I just want to ask Zoe and Anya and Maddie and those who've been monitoring chat here, if there are particular questions that we might want to just pick up and focus on now, either to seek an answer to, or at least to note to pass on for the rest of the day.
There's a general theme forming here around funding of services.
Yeah.
There around, you know, a lot of interventions are put into place and then get closed down due to funding or staffing. So we know resource is a big area of concern in this, you know, what we're trying to do with interprofessional working. I suppose for us from the project, what we tried to concentrate on, and, you know, notwithstanding funding and resources and staffing are always an issue, we've tried to concentrate on what we can do individually, organisationally, as professionals, and, you know, as normal human beings. So we'll pick that up in later workshops.
I think Zoe, I think that's a really important point, and I think we would note, and partners have done that. I think now that we've been in a very privileged position, having the financial support from Erasmus to be able to spend this amount of time together, and I think it's been reflected by what partners have said. Part of it, of course, is that very focused professional discussion and joint working on some materials and new approaches, but a lot of it is just the luxury of actually being able to spend time with people from related but different professions, or people working in the same profession but from different areas, and what a luxury that is. Unfortunately, with the loss of the Erasmus funding, this for people in the UK is not going to be replaced. The Turing scheme looks interesting, but it won't quite do this. So it will be interesting to see whether there's some means that this level of interprofessional dialogue can be continued in the future.
Just another comment there, Nick. Are children involved in this conference?
They are not. They are not. And thank you who raised that point. Thank you very much for that. We did consider that, and it's simply the practical difficulties of have taken that out. But can I say we're not proud about not having found a solution to that. And I think it's an illustration, really, the difficulties that we find. But you know, as far as we're concerned, the learning, what I would say is watch this space. We do have some very powerful intentions here.
Just going back through the chat, just some debate around the ACE framework and how useful it actually is. I think we probably drew the same conclusions through the project, that our perspective had to move away from this particular set of things, has this particular set of outcomes. You know, as Nick talked about, we're 5 years further forward, the world has changed, and I think we've definitely come to the same conclusions.
Can I pick up a point which relates to that last very rightly pointed question about the engagement of children and young people? Of course, very significantly, beyond, if you like, the raw data about impacts of ACEs, the studies which have looked at the impact of ACEs and have sought the voice of people have focused on adult voice, which is retrospective. And Mark Bellis from the University of Bangor, you know, has done a lot of work supporting the Wales ACE hub, notes this, you know, as a criticism of his own work, that of necessity, if you're asking 18 to 80-year-olds points of reflection on their own childhood, you're getting a very valuable viewpoint. But of course, what there is a dearth of the voice of young people actually in the midst of these points of trauma and descriptions of it. And there is certainly scope for more work to be done relating to that. Thank you all very much. Thank you for those who contributed to that, to Jerry and to Wendy and to Zoe and Maddie and Trevor behind the scenes, and all participants. Do keep those coming. And for I'll say a little bit about what's going to happen after break, but I would say do keep the chat comments going. And if you want to ask specific questions of a specific person, make that clear in your or if you want to make a point or ask a question, make it clear in the comment that you put into the chat, and then we will use that at the end. Now, I want to say a little bit just about how we're concluding the project first, but then I'll tell you about what's going to happen after the break. I've noted to you all that a handbook will be produced. It is in the form of a directory. It will focus on the themes that we've just talked about now, and it will give an indication of current practice in those areas in the different partner countries. It will highlight the different training programs and pieces of work that were done on the project, and it will also draw together publications which relate to those themes. It will be, as any piece of work, frozen in time. From the point that we publish it, it will be relevant, directly relevant to that point, but we won't be in a position to revise it or add to it later. So we'll have a period of life where we hope it is going to be useful to people. We hope it will be useful to professionals, and we hope it will be useful to students and to academics. And it will summarize actually where the project has gone. Today gives, I think, just a flavor of some of that.